So today's video is going to be about Manic Panic in the color Cotton Candy Pink. So to start, I have my swatches labeled 1 through 12, but that is not synonymous with hair levels. 1 is green. Green and pink are across from each other on the color wheel, so I wanted to see if the pink would have any effect on the green. Number 2 is a bluish gray. 3 is a natural red. 4 is black, and then from 4 up to 11 we have a range that goes to platinum blonde, and then number 12 is a toned version of number 11. These swatches are human hair, but the only one that is virgin hair is going to be the number 4 black swatch. Otherwise, the rest are not virgin hair. So to start, I'm going to be taking the dye directly from the container, and I'll be putting it at the top of each swatch. And then some people do like to dilute their dyes, so I'll be putting a diluted version at the bottom of each swatch, and I will let you know the measurement for that when we get there. As always, please keep in mind that everyone's hair takes dye differently, so how your hair turns out could be different from how my swatches turn out. So please just use my video as a reference point as to what it could look like. Of course, it's always a good idea and smart to do a bunch of research and do things like strand tests. For the diluted section, I'm going to try doing equal parts. So 1 part Cotton Candy Pink to 1 part diluter. So for diluter, I personally will always just use a white conditioner. And if you don't know what diluter is, to keep it short, it basically just lightens the color of the dye. I'm gonna let these sit for about 3 hours. I will rinse them out and let them dry. Once they are dry, I will meet you back here and we can do some comparisons. I will say I've used this dye in the past on my hair. It always came out much more pastel on my hair, not really quite as neon, kind of more like the diluted section here. So when I read the bottle and I saw that it said it was neon, I was a little bit confused. But now that I did it on my swatches, I understand. So I would say my 2 personal favorite swatches are number 11 and 12. So number 11 obviously has a very bright, pretty much like neon look. And then number 12, it's much more of like a baby pink. You don't quite get that neon, but it is still intense. And it looks a lot more cool toned on the toned swatch as well. Number 1, I would say on the direct dye, it didn't really cover. It did change the hair a little bit, It doesn't look quite as green, but it's still kind of green though. It didn't take away all of that green color. Number 2, I also really like. It almost has a purpley pink look to it. It's still very pink, but when I look at the number 12, which was the toned one, this looks even more cool toned. I'm assuming that's because of the blue in the hair beforehand. I like number 3 because it almost still looks a little bit natural, but some of the strands really took the pink. So in some lighting, it probably would look more natural red, and in other lightings, it would look a lot brighter. Even though this dye isn't quite as pastel as I thought it was, it still doesn't take on the darker swatches. I do see an undertone difference on the number 7 swatch, but I feel like that would only happen if your hair really absorbs dye well. At the very least, I would say your hair should be like 9 or 10, but even that doesn't look quite as intentional as the Platinum Blonde swatch did. So I wanted to jump into comparisons, and the first comparison I wanted to do was Arctic Fox in the color Frose. This is comparable to number 12. This is comparable to number 11. And this is comparable to number 10. So I was extremely in between whether I wanted to compare Frose or Electric Paradise from Arctic Fox. And the reason I chose Frose is because the undertone, in my opinion, is a little bit more similar. But I will just throw in a couple of the Electric Paradise. So this is Electric Paradise comparable to number 12. And this is Electric Paradise comparable to number 11. So you can see in comparison, the Electric Paradise holds a lot closer to a orange color. By itself, it does look pink, but when you're comparing it to things that are even more pink, it tends to look a lot more orange, I've noticed. But they're both very bright and very neon. So Frose, in my opinion, is kind of marketed as like a rose gold color. And because of that, it's not a super bright, closer to a more pastel dye, depending on your hair, of course. But you can really see that even on number 11. And I would say it's more comparable to Cotton Candy Pink Diluted. They both do have a very similar undertone. My next comparison that I wanted to do was Lime Crime in the color Strawberry Jam. So this is comparable to number 12. This is comparable to number 11. And number 10. So Strawberry Jam does run slightly more warm toned and slightly less neon looking. So they're both bright, but bright in different ways. This is comparable to number 9, and this is comparable to number 8. I wouldn't say that Strawberry Jam is meant for darker blondes or lighter brown hair, but it can change the undertone in the same way that Cotton Candy Pink does. But to me, the Strawberry Jam does seem to hold a little bit better on these swatches. Recently, I did do a different dye that I basically considered to be like a highlighter pink color. So I wanted to compare that one as well. And that one is IROIRO in the color Neon Pink. This is comparable to number 12. This is comparable to number 11. This is comparable to number 10 and number 9. The neon pink is extremely pigmented for being like a neon bright dye. You can see even on the diluted sections here, it dyed very well. That being said, it's also extremely bright and way more neon than Cotton Candy Pink, and even slightly more warm toned. So essentially Cotton Candy Pink isn't neon, but it's kind of leaning on that side of the spectrum. So I would say that Cotton Candy Pink is kind of that really nice in between where it's not too muted, but it's also not extremely neon either. All right, we're finished with our comparisons, so let's get into the close-ups. The close-ups and pretty much anything at the end of the video will all be done in natural lighting. And just keep in mind, it can be difficult to recreate the exact same environment when you're using natural lighting. So if anything looks slightly off, that is probably why. I hope this video helped. If you have a request, I do have a link down below to a Google form you can fill out. Just remember, I only do dyes that do not test on animals. Thank you so much to my patrons, and thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.